Hey guys, welcome to the Silver Report. Here we are, it's Sunday, March 19th, 2017. We have gold currently trading at $1,229.80. Silver's trading at $17.47. And I wanted to talk about something dire that is taking place in our country. And what we've just seen, we have another Goldman and Sachs member, Donovan, was nominated as Deputy Treasury Secretary. Donald Trump, he said he intends to nominate Jim Donovan, a Goldman and Sachs banker, as the Deputy Secretary of Treasury. His most recent was managing director at the private bank's wealth management division and has been at Goldman since 1993. He would be subject to Senate confirmation, but of course the Senate is also owned by Goldman and Sachs. And so we saw a lot of rhetoric against Goldman and Sachs government influence during his campaign. He tapped a number of high-ranking personnel from the bank to serve in his administration. Besides Stephen Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary now, former Goldman officials working on the new administration include President Gary Cohn, now the Director of National Economic Council, Steve Bannon, of course, the Chief White House Strategist, Dina Powell, the bank's head of investment, who's an assistant to the president and senior counselor for economic initiatives. And so, of course, the bank reached out. Goldman Sachs said he's a wonderful guy, extremely versatile, wonderful guy to have on the team. Why don't you go ahead and just throw him on there? It'll be very helpful to everything you guys have planning. I wanted to talk about what are the largest full-service investment banks in the country. We see number 1, J.P. Chase. Number 2, Goldman and Sachs. 3, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. 4, Morgan Stanley. 5, Citigroup. 6, Barclays Investment Bank. 7, Credit Suisse. 8, Deutsche Bank. And so these are the largest banks in the world. It's no wonder that we see that adding that 10 banks control all 12 Federal Reserve branches. He names N.M. Rothschild of London, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam, Lehman Brothers of New York, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Kuhn Loeb Bank of New York, Israel Moses, Seif Bank of Italy, Goldman Sachs of New York, and J.P. Chase Bank of New York, Citigroup, and also William Rockefeller, Paul Warburg, Jacob Schiff, James Stillman as individuals with large shares of the Fed. This may be a lot of the headlines we're seeing coming up where they're discussing how so many of these Goldman and Sachs members are making it onto the Federal Reserve Board. What is that? We saw one of the most damaging things, and this should make everybody in this country mad. Number 1, even under the Obama administration, in 2009 alone, Goldman and Sachs took more than $20 billion in taxpayer cash, just to give the allure that they were doing well through the bailouts. And Lehman Brothers also is a bank that is a shareholder of the Federal Reserve, one of the controlling banks of the Federal Reserve. So when Lehman Brothers goes under, all of a sudden it's too big to fail. And so these Goldman and Sachs, members of our government, go and they say, well, we need a bailout. And no wonder they get full support in the Congress because half of those people have been placed in there by Goldman and Sachs. And they take $20 billion of that $1 trillion bailout. Payments and backstops. Plus, they paid out $16.2 billion as 2009 bonuses, an additional $5 billion more in bonuses in 2010. We also saw that their bleeding from the mortgage-backed securities was picked up by the Federal Reserve. And so whenever we look at just what's going on in this country, corporations like Goldman and Sachs help elect a majority of Congress by donating a mere $1.6 billion campaign donations. So the same money that went from our taxpayer bailout went to elect the officials who approved it. That's less than 10% of the $20 billion bailout Goldman and Sachs received, easily affordable with a 10 times return on investment. So multi-billion-dollar bailouts don't just happen by themselves, and collapses and economic crises on that level don't just happen by themselves while we are losing our homes. And now these major banks become the largest property and real estate owners in the world by acquisitioning our homes that we worked hard for. right before the layoff lines came, and they kicked us out of our job, and the mortgage came due, and they foreclosed, and now they rent them to us. Yes, that's right. They've turned America into renters. Not only is a cabinet being filled up with Goldman and Sachs members, there's some other prominent figures that I'm sure you have heard their names before, like Rahm Emanuel, the famous mayor of Chicago. We see William C. Dudley, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, was also from Goldman and Sachs. Mario Draghi, his name pops headlines all the time. That's because he's the president of the European Central Bank. Ian Macfarlane, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia. Tito Mboweni, the governor of the Reserve Bank of South Africa. Evan McMullen, the independent candidate for president in the U.S. presidential election, 2016. We also saw Henry Paulson make our list, the former United States Secretary of the Treasury from 2006 to 2009, and also Mark Patterson, the Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Treasury of the United States, 2009 forward. Robin Rubin, the former Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. He's also an ex-chairman of Citigroup, because they're all connected. We see Romano Prodi, the Prime Minister of Italy, between 2006 and 2008, and he was the president of the European Commission. Lawrence Summers, Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, 1999 to 2001. John Thane, he was the former chairman and CEO of Merrill Lynch. Former chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister of Australia, 2015 on. We see Massimo Tonino, the Treasury Undersecretary of the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Italy, 2006 through 2008. More interestingly, because we have this fight about fake news, we have Aaron Burnett, the CNN host, William Buter, the chief economist of Citigroup, Josh Bolton, I'm sure you remember the name, former White House chief of staff, Guy Adami, CNBC's Fast Money. So what we've seen is that this collapse didn't come as a result of economic analysis, but it came as a result of the incentive for these too-big-to-fail banks to benefit. And then the remedy, the Dodd-Frank bill that they so eloquently put together, or was put together for them by their own employees of the bank, has now included references to the United States citizens' savings accounts that they can then take them as their own personal property, liquidate them in the event of another economic crash, another economic crisis. This might be some of the reason we've been seeing so much hype about everyone putting their money into the stock market, because as we've seen, Goldman and Sachs operated for years without a single day of loss. So along with JP Morgan and Chase, Goldman and Sachs not only controls this government, controls the government of Clinton, of Bush, of Obama. Obama's cabinet was filled with Goldman and Sachs members. Adam Storch, Alexander Lasry. They have taken control of this country, so the endless cycles of boom and bust and bailouts and then bail-ins is what is written in now. The same thing that they're facing all throughout the European Union. These same controlling entities have control of everything. There is no accidental collapse. This is why analysts can't predict it. It is because they have acquired so much wealth and so much human and material resources that they are capable of collapsing trade at any point that they desire. And now that they have the legal authority by their congressmen and their senators, bought and paid for, of course, we're the one who are taxed with no representation. They now have the legal right to liquidate savings accounts in the United States. This is what this channel's about: gold and silver for personal liberty, for personal security of wealth, about being disconnected, because the same people who print endless amounts of this paper, the Federal Reserve, are the same people who control our government, the same people who control our stock markets, the same people who control our news, CNN and CNBC. And more than that, these are just the clear and apparent connections. And so we see that this massive rally, this massive push for money into the financial sector, we must realize that this game is not our own, no matter how much we would like it to be, no matter how much we would like for things to get better. No matter how much we would like to think that we have that American fighting spirit, that somehow we are going to see a remedy. No. The days to prepare are now. The best time is last year. All right, thank you guys for joining me here on the Silver Report. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe, like the videos, share the videos, get the word out. I thank you guys all so much for stopping by. As always, stay safe.